Here with Jose
and his
Luis Morales,
and his sophisticated look, you know.
his sophisticated look, my brother from another mother, Mr. Jose Morales. How you doing, bro? I feel like I haven't talked to you in a minute.
I know.
You've been busy slanging all this real estate. I've been traveling a lot, man. You are, bro. How you been? You been good?
Yeah, everything's good. Life is
Yeah, you're
good.
always good.
Family's good.
Man, how Swayze's in the room. What's up, Swayze? How you doing, brother? I haven't talked to him in a while. Yeah, you said, I remember I spoke to you one time and I asked him, like, hey, how you doing? You're like, Aaron. I'm like, what? You were like, we're always good because we're winners.
Always good. Always
That's
good.
right. That's right. So I had a pretty unique experience
Uh-huh.
recently. I got invited to be on the Grant Cardone Celebrity Cruise that was in the Bahamas. And I figured it could be helpful or useful for us to just kind of talk about, because me and you would talk about it separately, probably on a phone call that nobody would hear. We can talk about it together as a team with regards to like what I learned and how we can apply it to what it is that we're doing in the real estate space.
Love it.
Yeah. So one of the things that me and you have subscribed to for a long time is just perpetually and constantly getting ourselves into rooms that are uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember when I first met you, how many transactions do you think you were doing at that time when we first connected, whatever that was, like 10, 11 years ago?
Maybe like 15, somewhere on there. 15, 17.
Yeah. And at the time I was doing like 100.
Yeah.
And that was very uncomfortable for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we started role playing and it was also really uncomfortable for you because you weren't kind of at that level yet. You've blossomed into a marvelous, fantastic salesperson. But when I met him, that wasn't necessarily the case, right?
Yeah.
And for me, that individual was somebody, Neil, which you know, and I've spoken to him every week for like 15 years. When I initially met him, though, I was doing about 50 transactions and he was doing 200. So this cruise was interesting for me because like I was in rooms with people that are just operating at very high frequencies, doing very high things.
Yeah.
I know that there's other things that are in life that are, important in business. The measuring stick that we have is, kind of revenue or what we're doing. And like 0.01% of real estate agents ever do $1 million a year in revenue. 4% of all businesses in the United States, all businesses like laundromats and, kind of
Everything.
cookie shops and everything in between, yoga studios ever get to $1 million in revenue. So that's a hurdle. It's a high watermark. What's up, Andres? How you doing, brother? He's the one who gave me the invite. Reluctantly, though, I had to call him. So it wasn't reluctantly. I appreciate you, bro. So what I'm aware of is at that time when I got proximity to Neil, it was incredibly uncomfortable. And while I'm on this cruise, these people are vibrating at very high frequencies. I was at a dinner where pretty much everybody at the dinner is doing 5 to 17 million, almost $20 million in revenue. And me and you are used to in the real estate space, and I don't mean this egotistically, it's just true. If we're in rooms, we're usually those people for other people. What's wild is it's been a long time since I was like uncomfortable. And that was uncomfortable, right? Kind of being in those rooms. So, and I know that that's something you still do. You were telling me like that mastermind you're in, Collective Genius, it's uncomfortable for you because there are people in those rooms that are doing, 15, 20 X what you're doing.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I was in a previous room, and I think high end, top of the room, people were making $3 to $4 million in revenue. $1 million, $2 million, $3 million. So I felt like I stopped growing. So when I joined the Collective Genius Mastermind, I basically got involved in a room where I was the smallest fish in that room. And it was interesting because in that mastermind, in order to qualify, you either have to do 100 investment deals a year, which I don't do 100 investment deals a year, or have a sizable real estate portfolio, which that was how I was able to qualify because of the real estate holdings that we have. But I remember when I started talking to people, I talked to the first person. I'm like, man, this guy's amazing. Like a lot more in revenue than what I was presently doing at the time. Talk to the next person, and every person that I talked to on that mastermind was extremely high level, and I felt like the smallest fish in the room. So what I started doing is it reminded me back to where I got in the first room, the first events that I would attend, where I was looking up to people and those people were helping me stretch and grow. And then I stagnated. Now I got into a bigger room and I felt like I was in that same position where I was like, okay, what is subject to? What is a wraparound mortgage? How do you do a syndication? How do you buy a storage unit complex? What is pay per lead? And I started learning all these things, and I felt like that again. But I think one of the key takeaways that you told me is that on your boat tour, the people on there that like Grant or some of the other people on there, they're consistently doing that where they're getting themselves in bigger and bigger rooms. I felt like I stagnated for a while where I got really comfortable in one room. And it wasn't until I jumped into that collective genius mastermind that I started to grow again. And now there's people like doing $40 million in revenue, $50 million in revenue, which is,
Yeah. And I think with that, and to your point, yes, Grant does have that. And who that is people like Bob Duggan or Glenn Stearns who are like billionaires.
yeah.
So we look at Grant and we see somebody who's like has a tremendous amount of certainty. And he was just saying, like, even when he pushes into new things, like he feels fear. He goes to somebody like Bob to kind of triangulate ideas and say, hey, what do you think? And Bob, who's on the Forbes 400 list, he's one of the richest people on planet Earth, which is wild to think about. You know, I had a 20-minute conversation with him at the gym. Like he's literally one of the richest people on planet
Well,
Earth.
it's crazy because at the first event that I would go to, you'd meet people at the gym as well too that were doing $2, $3, $4 million in revenue. Same thing happened at Collective Genius, and now for you, just being part of the room, you got to have a 20-minute conversation with a billionaire at the gym. You
That's
know?
right. So it's interesting that success leaves clues. Like if I was sleeping in and going to eat waffles and like doing that stuff, I wouldn't even meet those people. So yeah, and Grant goes to somebody like him and triangulates and says, "Hey, here's what I'm thinking of doing. Like, what do you think?" And Bob was like, "Yeah, and you should do 10 of them." You know what I mean? Because he's thinking at like this whole other scale. Grant's like, "Yeah, I'm just trying to do this one thing," and he's like, "Yeah, that's great. The logic behind it's sound. It makes sense. Go do 10."
Tell me about the boat, bro. Like, what did it have? Like,
Oh,
how many rooms? Like, talk to me about that. How much do you think it was worth,
yeah.
too?
What do you mean?
Like, what do you think the value of something like that cost? Like a boat
Oh, you
like
mean the
that?
whole boat
Yeah, the whole
itself,
boat.
or like $1 billion probably? It's
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah, it's like hundreds of millions of dollars. I
Were,
have no
were you
idea.
guys stationed in one location, or did you guys get to go to different locations? Or
No, we went around, bro. Went around the Caribbean, went around the Bahamas and different places. San Salvador and then the Bahamas. Yeah.
did you guys get
So
down anywhere, or just stay on the boat?
mhm. Yeah, you were able to get off the boat. The issue was though, is if you get off the boat, you would miss some of the speakers.
Got it.
So it's like listen to a billionaire or get off the boat. It's like probably gonna sit and listen to the billionaire. That's what
Yeah.
I'm probably gonna do. So we got off once on the day before like the last day. We got
Mhm.
off in the Bahamas, me and Carla, and um, went to the beach, which was cool. But the rest of the time we were there. Yeah, the service is like, they talk about like the Ritz Carlton experience, and in our business, we talk about like providing like high levels of service to
Yeah.
people. Bro, they do it. I was hearing stories from people like one woman, because they have like different themes. So one night is like Havana night, so you got to dress up like Havana, and then the next night is like black tie night, so you're wearing like a black tie and dresses. The next night is like blue night, and then there's a white night. You know what I mean? So you got to like bring clothes that fit the
Yeah.
criteria, which is a new experience. But anyway, this woman, she had a little like a clothespin for her dress because it was like showing a little bit too much, so she wanted to like restrict it. So she sent it to the dry cleaners for them to dry clean it. Bro, they sent her back the dress perfectly stitched. She didn't ask to do it. They just did it. That's wild. Another example, at a dinner, they're sitting right next to us. This guy's like, "Yeah, I really." It was a sushi restaurant. I really, really like sake. The guy's like, "Okay, awesome. You know what I'm going to do for you is I'm going to give you a sake tasting." Okay, great. So he brings out all these different forms of sake. There's somebody there that's like playing a piano right next to you. It's like this whole experience. And the guy asked the guy, he's like, "Hey, what would have that cost?" It was like a $5,000 tasting
Wow.
with the bottles and all that stuff. They just did it. So it really got me thinking with regards to like mm, whether you're
Experiences.
in, yeah, like whether you're exactly experiences, and it's small things. Like you would think it's not that big a deal, but everywhere you go on the ship, everybody's like, "Hello, Mr. Morales. How are you, Mr. Morales? You having a good day, Mr. Morales? Do you need anything, Mr. Morales?" Like every single place that you go. And you would think that that's a really small thing, but like it makes a really big difference because virtually in any other business, I start thinking to myself, in any other business, does anybody greet me? No. You know what I mean? They're just like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Or they don't even pay attention to you. How many times have you gone into an establishment and people don't even pay attention to you?
Yeah. They don't
So
even
it's just
they don't
really
even acknowledge you.
right. They don't even acknowledge you. And this was everybody, Jose. I'm talking about the people that not only clean the rooms, but to the chefs, to the kind of entertainment staff, to the gym staff, the people who do like stretching
Yeah.
in the evening or do yoga class. Like everybody is not only acknowledging you, but making you feel safe and making you feel welcome. So that was an interesting experience as me and you continue to push into kind of expanding our ecosystem and expanding our community is how can, and I'm thinking like how can we continue to provide like that level of touch, personal touch, that level of service
Yeah.
really. Yeah, which was, an interesting experience. And Grant rented the whole boat. Think about that. The entire ship.
Did he say how much it cost to rent it?
No, but it
No.
had to be, it was like millions and millions and millions. Probably like $3-4 million, probably
Yeah.
easy. Because that's the way he thinks, right? He's like, yeah, let's rent out the whole thing, and like we'll fill it up. And me and you started talking because, like, we have this Do More Deals Summit coming. If you're watching, you should be there. It's going to be fire. We have some of
Mm-hmm.
the best in the industry in one place. You got the Jose Maurice, Luis Morales of the world doing 2 million in GCI. I'm going to be doing a talk. We have Pace Morby, who's going to be in the building, who has the #1 best-selling creative finance book in the country. We have the guy who created and founded the Enzo Dialer. We have the guy who created and founded Need to Sell My House Fast. So guys, if you want to do more deals, this is the place to be. But me and Jose, this is the first time we've ever done this at this scale. We did one earlier this year, but it was smaller. And people don't realize, and Grant was even saying this, he's like, I have no idea how I'm going to do it. When people came to him and said, hey, Ryan Secco came to him and was like, hey, we should open up this investing instead of just being friends and family. We should do a syndication and raise money. You know what Grant's first response was, Jose?
No.
No. He said no. What was my first response when you told me about EXP? I was like, no,
No.
not gonna do that. I'm good. And then his Sherry Hamilton, his COO, she came to him and was like, hey, we should do an event. We should throw a growth con and rent out all of Marlins Stadium. Grant said, no, there's no way. We're not gonna do that. No way we're gonna do that. She's like, I think we should. Like, let's go take a look. And he went and took a look, and when he saw it, he's like, oh yeah, let's do that. He had no idea if he was going to sell it out. And you know what he said, which was interesting? He's like, truthfully, he started getting reports every single like day how many tickets they sold. You know what he said he was most concerned about, Jose? He wasn't concerned about losing money. He was concerned about being embarrassed that nobody showed up. So that drive, he got committed and he just figured it out and he did it. And me and you were talking, it's like, yeah, we're doing it at a much smaller scale. But I realize that this event that we're doing is at the same scale financially as the build events that they do across the country. We're doing our own build. And me and you were talking about it like, not on camera, obviously, but we're like, yeah, we don't really know what we're doing. But we're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
And every time you do that, you end up building kind of trust in yourself that you can figure it out.
And you can sell it out, and you can, get people there. You can fill in seats and everything like that. But it's funny because when you said the biggest concern is nobody showing up, I think for me, even too, when I do events, it's not the money. It's like, okay, like, what if nobody is there? You know?
Right. And what's cool is that's Grant's concern too. So we think that these people possess, like, I don't know, like something superhuman. They're not. They're human, bro. He gets nervous and scared every time he does something. Like when he's doing a new fund now, which I told you about, which is very interesting, where he takes Bitcoin, he buys an apartment building that's below market value, below replacement cost. Let's say for 72 million, he adds 15 million worth of Bitcoin to it. And then when you invest in the fund, you're investing basically in a building and a Bitcoin, which is interesting because now it's backed by real estate.
Yeah.
That's cool. Me and you were talking off camera. I'm like, yeah, I understand it as a storehouse of value. Like that makes sense. And in this way, now I can do it, but it's backed by real estate versus like if I do it and it goes to zero, then it's backed by nothing.
Yeah.
Well, when he first, like somebody brought that to him, what do you think his answer was at first?
No.
But he had to get to himself to a place of certainty. He read a book called The Bitcoin Standard. He read it twice. I need to like know. And I started to think about that. Isn't that the same thing that me and you did with media? You first and me second?
Yeah.
You went to Pineda. Bro, I followed your lead on that. What's up, Roy? How you doing, brother? You went to Pineda first. And he was cheaper when you went because he wasn't as big. So you went to him first. You paid him. You learned. You applied, and it worked.
And that's why I asked about the mastermind. I said, what masterminds are you involved in? He said, I'm involved in these. And then I applied, paid $25,000 and got in, basically, you know?
Yeah, and people don't realize, like, that's the other thing about getting on this ship is, like, in proximity. So we did a lunch and learn today, right? And we were there, and there was a guy there. What's up, Ray? What's up, Deshaun? So there was a guy there who is with one of these flat fee companies, right? And he's like, yeah, I get to keep all the commissions. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. What do you get? Nothing. So I told him a story. I'm like, look, whether you have faith or not, there's some interesting stuff you can learn from the Bible. And King Solomon was like, one of the wealthiest people in human history. When God went to him and asked him what he wanted, because he's like, yo, you can have whatever you want. What do you want? You know what he requested? Wisdom. And with the wisdom, what happened? He got everything else. So what I was pointing out to him is like, look, dude, because he's like, oh, he was asking me questions like, oh, do they offer any money for marketing? Do they offer any money for like an office? I'm like, dude, listen to me. You're focused on the wrong thing. You're focused on little incremental dollars, which actually go down in value over time. They're actually not worth that much. Instead of being focused on how can I acquire the wisdom? How can I get access to what's true? Does that make sense? And once I have and that's what Grant was saying, you have to get yourself to a place of certainty. I have to know. So when I went the route that you went, you did the same thing I did. You went and saw Ryan.
Yeah.
You watched him. You observed what's going on here. What are they doing? How's this working? And then you applied. So what Grant was saying and what Bob said, they both said the same thing. Observe, then you start to take action. You iterate. The reason why you iterate and you iterate fast is you get a lot of feedback. And then once you get feedback, you continue to tinker, then you get to a place of certainty. I know this. Same way I know the sky is blue and the grass is. Same way I know it's daytime outside right now. I know it. And once you get to a place of certainty, what's wild about that is I was telling somebody, let's say somebody knows for sure that they're going to be late and they're going to miss their plane. They're in the airport and they are running to get to their plane.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going in the opposite direction, what are you going to do if you see that person running?
Move.
Get out of the way. When you get yourself to a place of certainty, people get out of your way because you just know it's true. Now, if anybody else wants to get to the same destination, what are they going to start to do? Follow the person that's running. You ever been somewhere, Jose, where you're like, I have, where like, I don't know, maybe like you're in the airport and they said something over the intercom and you were talking about yellow, whatever. I was talking to Carla and like, I didn't hear them fully. What's the first thing I do? And I see somebody like moving aggressively in that direction. I'm like, hey, what are you doing? And they look back and they're like, no, 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 like we got to go. Like we're going to miss a plane. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's the same thing here. So I got to get data, learn, right? After I acquire the data, then I got to iterate, start to do stuff. I get feedback. Then as that happens, I continue to refine, refine, refine. Then I get myself to a place of certainty.
Certainty.
I know this. And then when you get to a place of certainty, people move out of your way. And then you start to move mountains. You could do things that are wild. So like, and I started to think about this as I'm hearing both of them say this. Bob, when we're having the 20-minute conversation, Grant, when he's talking, right? And they're clearly, they think very clearly, they're vibrating at high frequencies. Yeah. I started to reflect back and I'm like, oh, that's true. So the way me and you learned residential resale, what do? We got access to people who could give us data. Yes.
Yeah.
This is what this is. This is what the stack time on top of. This is what's important. Then we started to take massive action in iterating, right? Iterate, 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 iterate. Keep doing it, doing it, doing it, doing it, refining, 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 refining. Then what ended up happening? Now I know.
Yeah. It's almost
I
like,
told you recently. Go ahead.
well, I think it's what you told that guy. Like that guy is like, oh, like, do you guys have offices? Do you guys provide marketing? I think most people are focused on the wrong things. And if you literally just focus on finding wisdom, it that's the game changer right there, you know? But it's
It's it.
completely shifting the focus basically from, okay, how much is a split? How much is this? You're focused on the wrong things. It's all
You're
about the
focused on the wrong
wisdom.
thing, bro.
Like I think the like when I started in real estate, the very first I think realization that was game changing was that all of the leverage is on the listing side. So if I want to be like a top producing agent, a lot of the top producing agents do 50% or more of their business on the listing side. That was the first like, okay, piece of wisdom that was shared with me. You know, I think a lot of people
And
aren't getting
think
the
about how valuable that one piece of data is.
yeah,
One piece of data. That one piece of data is, bro, it's worth $1 million
minimum.
minimum. I mean, you were kind enough to share with me. We were on vacation together, which we should do again. That was fun.
Mhm.
But we were on vacation. You're like, yeah, dude, like if you didn't teach me how to do this, like none of this stuff would be happening.
Yeah.
It's just data. It's like, bro, how valuable is it to get proximity to the data? Bro, I shouldn't be worried about how much does it cost. I'm like, how much can I give you, dude, to get access to the wisdom? Because that's really the thing that makes all the difference. That one piece of data or one piece of data, like, hey, don't ever go on a listing appointment that you don't pre-qualify fully. That's just a piece of data. Or hey, like, make it a point to have in your schedule at all times that for 2 to 3 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week, you're doing this one activity. That's just a piece of data, right? And now what we're intentionally and purposely doing is figuring out what's working so we can share that data with agents. Agents that are partner with us, agents that aren't, we do it for free. We give away $1 million a game with it for free.
Mm-hmm.
So that, and I started to think like with the media thing, it's the same thing. I had no idea what I was doing, and I reached out to you. Hey, who do you know this is doing this the best? And you're like, look, there's all these dudes. They have courses. They have this. Nobody makes more money than Ryan. Okay, he's the guy. Then you go to the guy, and don't be immature and imagine that you're not going to have to pay the guy a boatload of money to give you the wisdom. You know what I'm saying? Or a meaningful amount. So we paid him a meaningful amount. And then I got access to the data. And then what did I do? I started taking massive action. Iterate, 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 iterate to figure out what's working and what's not. And then 3 years later, this year, almost 2 million views on YouTube, 71,000 hours of watch time. Now I'm certain. I know the same way I know the sky is blue and the grass is green. And you even told me recently, you're like, hey, bro, here's what's really true because I'm busy selling real estate right now. You probably understand it a little bit better than I do.
Yeah.
Not because you're not capable. You're just not, you're not iterating as much.
Yeah. That's not where my attention
But
is.
the beautiful part about our partnership, though, is that we do that for each other. So like you'll get into something and you'll iterate, and you're like, yo, this is the way. I'm like, okay. Or I'll get into something, iterate, and then you're like, hey, I want to do that too. You're like, great, this is the way. And it condenses time. The proof is in the progress. Like I found out recently, Jose, like we as an organization, but we're one of the fastest growing organizations in the company. But people might be like, "Oh, you're young. That's the reason why." No, maybe a little bit, but not entirely. It's because what we know. We know what's working, and we can tell you why it's working. Right. So
Hmm.
now that I know that wisdom, not only can I use it, but it's incredibly valuable because if people want to get access to the wisdom, what do they do? So Solomon, because he had all the wisdom, do you know what people did, Jose? They would come to him to learn from him. The Queen of Sheba came to him and paid him like the equivalent of like $100 million, whatever, like at the time, $1 billion, whatever it was, a stupid amount of money. Why? Because she had heard the way he ran his kingdom and that it was super efficient and super effective and he was the wealthiest person. She wanted to come learn from him. That's interesting. It's the same reason why people want to go learn from Grant. Yes?
Yeah,
Same. It's the same reason why people want to learn from me and you. Yes?
100%.
Same. So that was a very interesting, like, I think I knew that, but it's cool to see it at a higher frequency. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? The other thing that was very interesting that Carla took away, which I thought was a cool insight, is like she was like, yeah, like it's really cool to see because I watched Grant raise about $700,000 in 30 minutes for charity. He was auctioning off his time. He was auctioning off his staff's time. He was auctioning off other stuff that he has that he probably gets for free, all in the name of helping young children learn about get financial literacy. I support that. I know you support it. And Carla said something which was interesting. She's like, yeah, it's like super interesting because people have like a lot of negative connotations on people who have resources. And yeah, sure, some of them like,
They're
they're just
some
like
of the
selfish.
kindest human beings.
Bro, like they really want to help people. It was wild. She's like, yeah, it's wild to sit in a room where they're like auctioning off paintings and stuff. Somebody's like 10,000, 15,000, 25,000, but it's going towards charity. It's going towards actually helping other people. So it was this cool like mental awareness for Carla because I think we live in a time where people think wealth is wicked. I think that's happened for a while, but I think there's like and I understand why because there's a bigger disparity between the haves and the have-nots.
Hmm.
But people think like people who have resources are like evil. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, what I was gonna say is, um, it. I'm reading the Almanac of Charlie Munger right now, and it's
Yep.
talking about like how human beings are irrational and in some cases have tremendous amount of misjudgment. So it's been having me think a lot about like why some people are successful and others are not. And what I'm kind of seeing is that the reason people are successful, they just keep making good decision after good decision after good decision. And people who aren't successful or are struggling in some way, they're just making bad decisions after bad decisions. And a lot of it has to do with having good judgment. And it goes over 25 different principles, which I'm at um, the first four principles. And one of the principles right now, as you were saying that, reminded me uh, of how some people don't actually like Grant Cardone. And sometimes when you don't like somebody, it clouds your judgment to be able to see what is true. So it inhibits your ability to be like, okay, is what they're saying true or not? And is the reason that I dislike them because they're saying something that is true that is different than what I believe in? So instead of like focusing on do I like this person or do I not like this person, focusing more on is what they're saying true or not? And even for agents as well, too. I've had like people that select a certain broker because they like them, which that's one of the first belief of misjudgment is rewards and rewards and punishments, meaning that rewards and punishments can cloud judgment. depending on what those rewards and punishments are. Second one is like or love and like, and then the other one is dislike and hate basically as well too.
Yeah, and I feel like so Grant said something which was interesting. He said when you hear something new from someone, there's always going to be friction. The reason why is because there's friction between what I believe and what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
And what I find incredibly limiting, I actually had this conversation with somebody recently this week. I think when people hear messages, the messenger can get in the way of the message. So the way they say it or whatever. And I'm reading Amplify Your Influence right now, which is
Yeah.
an awesome book. What he was saying is that there's 4 stages of influence. What's up, Keelan? I'm talking to Jose, bro. You texted him today. Let's go. The first stage of influence is people need to feel safe, right? And sometimes we perceive a different belief than ours. Maybe that makes us feel unsafe, so we turn it off. Or let's say somebody uses language that we don't like. We turn it off because we don't feel safe. But what I'm becoming increasingly aware of is how incredibly limiting that is. So one of the things that me and you are clear on together, individually and kind of uniformly, is being like unemotionally attached to like the truth,
Regardless of who the messenger is.
regardless of who the messenger is, regardless of how they're communicating it. Like I just want to get to what's true. I want the data. I want the wisdom.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I might not respect, I don't know, what they choose to do with their extracurricular activities. I may not respect what they choose, how they choose to treat their significant other. I may not respect the language that they use or whatever. If they're producing outcomes in an area that you want to produce an outcome and you're not doing it, the reason is because they have a clearer assessment of reality than you do. They know something you don't. So what I'm interested in, just like you are, what's true? And one of the things that's cool is like you've told me before, you're like, yeah, dude, like the experience that you're in right now is because you've had you've been consistently making decisions that are like good
Judgment.
judgments
Yeah.
over 20 years, and they just compound. Yeah.
Yeah.
And as we continue to grow and evolve, because Grant also said this, listen to this, and this is good for you too. He said his and Elena's wife, his wife, life has changed the most when they walked away from something. I was like, let's think about that for a moment. And I started to think about myself. I'm like, wow, that's true. You know what I walked away from? I walked away from owning a home. I walked away from fully funded retirement accounts. I walked away from ownership in an office. I walked away from production. And I'm still walking away from things. I was having a conversation with you yesterday about walking away from things.
Yeah.
His life has changed the most as he's walked away from things. And what's fascinating is if you look at the general population, their goal and objective is to find something that works and do what? Never leave. That's complete opposite to the way it actually works. Yeah, because when you're so motivated by security, you won't walk away from things.
Yeah.
You know how many people you know or that I know that have had great opportunities, basically the same opportunities me and you did, but they can't walk away from things.
Yeah, it's almost like when I walked away from buyers to focus on the listing side. I've talked to agents about that want to make the transition into a dominant listing agent, and they have trouble walking away from the buyers, or they'll tend to cherry pick the buyers because they feel a sense of security there. And I remember when I did it, I had a goal like, okay, I'm going to have X amount of dollars in the bank in order for me to do this, which that's kind of the way that I operate at times where
And you still do it sometimes.
I'm doing it right now where I
I know you are. Yeah, yeah,
basically
yeah.
am going to stop selling real estate. And I'm like, okay, I got these goals. Once I reach these goals, but the good thing about the way that I did it is I follow through on it. Meaning like if I say, hey, I'm going to do this, then I actually do it. Like, so when
Yeah, you don't. My experience of you is you don't say like, "Hey, when this happens, I'll stop," and then you never do that. You're just like, "Hey, when this happens, I'm going to stop,"
and then I do it.
and you stop. And I was even saying to you, I was like, "Yeah, like maybe," and you said something playful, which I won't repeat here, but where I was like, "Yeah, maybe," because I'm like, "Yeah, look, dude," and I said it authentically. I'm like, "Hey, I'm aware like you're stepping into like you clicked into a different gear.
Oh, I know you. I said,
Yeah, yeah. And I won't repeat it here, but like I was like, yeah, you clicked into a different gear, and I
yeah,
can hear it,
yeah,
right? Because like previously it was more like, like I was kind of like mentor and like mentee sort of
yeah,
thing, and now I view us as like
yeah,
completely equal, which is the way it should be, because eventually the student like becomes the teacher sort of thing. But I know like now if me and you are role playing, like we're at the same level.
yeah,
And I was like, yeah, it's kind of interesting that you're clicking into that gear right as you're getting ready to stop doing it. I'm like, well, maybe you'll do a little bit. You go, no, bro, there's no half measures. It's all or nothing. So when I stop, I'm stopping.
yeah.
But it's having the courage
To let go of
to
something.
walk away from something, to let go of something that my identity was wrapped up into being the guy that does all the deals.
Yeah.
100%. The guy who lists all the properties. It was hard. It's where you have to crucify that old version of yourself. You have to kill him.
And you go from being the man to now recreating yourself into something
A whole
else is
different version
a
of me.
whole
And
different.
you've known me, bro. You've known me a long time.
Yeah.
The version of me that you met, I'm not the same person, and you
100.
can attest to that.
Yeah.
I'm not. Like if you would have told me, I don't know, 5 years ago, that I would be speaking at EXPCon on media, I would have laughed at you. If you'd have told me 5 years ago that I'd travel 6 weeks this year, I'd be like, that's ridiculous. That's not going to happen. So to Grant's point, the goal and objective is to constantly and perpetually be evolving.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, look, Roy knows you, bro. He said Jose walked away from cowboy boots to become a real estate juggernaut. It's true, bro. He walked away from them cowboy. He walked away from cowboy boots and Banda.
I'm going back to it, guys.
He's going back to it, baby. So, but isn't that an interesting insight? He's like, yeah, I've grown the most when I walked away from things. He
Yeah.
walked away from just being the guy who was like the guy for coaching car salesmen how to sell cars.
Walked away from California. He walked away
He walked
completely
away from
from.
California, bro.
Yeah.
Moved to Miami.
Yeah.
That's right. He's just walking away from things. Walked away from like, hey, I just do this with friends and family. Now I do it at scale for everybody. Went from having like a handful of investors to like 12,000, 13,000. Like he just keeps walking away from things. That's a very interesting insight, bro. And for all of us, not just, and what I perceive it as, Jose, it's not just walking away from like, let's say, like an identity, but it's also walking away from ways of thinking.
I walked away from certain friends to be a better husband.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, we talked about that. You noticed that when you did some work, that the two things that, bro, people are commenting. They're like, "Hey, I love to see two." Like, listen to this, Jose. Hold on.
That cloud my
He's like, "Hey, I always enjoy hearing you besties shoot the shit. I can't see Jose's cute little haircut and his baby face though. LOL. We need a split screen." That's funny, dude. So, um, uh, what's up, Jim Gilday? So, but you noticed that when you were with certain people and when there was alcohol involved, it caused you to not be the best version of yourself.
It caused me to have bad judgment.
Bad judgment or judgment.
Yeah.
And then what happened as a result is you made a decision to walk away from certain people.
Yeah. It's crazy because I took a class one time and it was called The Ups and Downs in Life. And it talked about the reason why people have ups and downs in their life. And it talked about how a lot of times when you have ups and downs, you have to walk away from certain people. And it doesn't matter who those people are, what relationship that you have to them. But it said that the reason people have ups and downs is because toxic people in your life. And then the book talked about how to identify these people.
Mm-hmm.
And their toxicity. And it was funny because as I was reading the book, I'm like, oh my God, this person does this. Boom. So it taught you how to identify these people as well, too.
It makes sense. And then what's wild is you notice that the moments that you cut those people out, your life improved.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you chose to continue to stay in proximity because, I'm aware your time's really valuable, and, I know for me and you, we're very similar, like, when you are producing at high volume and stuff, like, your time's really valuable, so the people that you choose to spend time with is very important,
Oh yeah.
and there's probably the inner circle is tiny, but you chose to allow people in the inner circle, whether it's me or whether it's, like, Angel or other people, that are kind of centered, that are clear, that embody, what like the values that you have,
Yeah.
and you cut other people out. But it requires courage to walk away from those other people. Because I'm sure they're all like, "Oh, what do you think? You're better than me?" Like,
No, and
like,
I've done that twice in my life now, where it's twice or maybe even three times, where like I've walked away from my high school friends at that stage in my life. Then I went into a different phase, then walked away from that. And then even the third phase, when I walked away from a certain environment for coaching for real estate. And that was hard because it was almost like a cult like environment. And that was hard because, and even when I walked away from my previous real estate company to join EXP, like that was, not challenging, but I knew that I was making the right decision. But there's always that like little doubt, like, okay, what if it doesn't work out? And it was funny because the last two that I walked away from, their message to me was, you can't be successful without this, or if you leave this, this won't work out for you. And a lot of times, like what I do is I do something called like thought auditing, which means that if I hear something or if I have a certain thought, I'll audit it to see how true it is. So I'll give you guys an example. Like, let's say that my previous company said, okay, we have the number one market share in West Ventura County. The only reason you're successful is because you are with our company and your production went up because you're with our company. And I started auditing that thought. I'm like, is this actually true? Or is it a message that they're feeding me? So I started like writing things down. I'm like, okay, are there any successful people in real estate outside of Ventura or in Ventura County that are not part of this company? Yes, there are. Are there any successful people in our market that own their very own company and are successful? And then I started going through all these different audits and I'm like, that's not true. And then that gave me certainty to be able to move forward with the decision I needed to make,
to make.
basically.
Yeah, and you even do that now, like when we're talking to each other, like, or let's say we're in a mastermind together, and we'll hear something, and it's like, well,
Is it true?
is it true? And I'm not like meaning like I want everybody to hear. This is not coming from a place of like I'm smarter. It's not what it's coming from. It's not coming from a place of ego. It's coming from instead like, well, let me think about this. Like, is that an accurate piece of data? Yeah. And then what's also interesting, because we've talked about this a lot, that truth is on a spectrum. Two things can be true at the same time,
One is true than another.
but
Yeah.
something's more true than something else. And most people, just because they get too emotional about being right or about information, they can't hang in long enough to continue to triangulate ideas to get to what's more true.
Yeah. Or they'll say
And
that, what is it that they say that,
we got to agree to disagree.
yeah, that, yeah.
Yeah, which is like, nah, dude, that's a cop out. Something's more true if you just stay and keep iterating.
And then,
So to give an example, like I was at EXPCon and I'm doing a talk on attraction, and I'm telling people what I'm doing. I'm like, yeah, I'm doing events, I'm doing like media. Here's why media is the way, because it scales. The best way to show somebody you can help them is by helping them for free. And the best way to do that at scale is media, like period. Well, there was somebody in the room who stood up and they were like basically like arguing with me. And they're like, well, I wouldn't do that. I would definitely pick up the phone. I would definitely call people. Like, this is what I would do. And I'm like, look, dude, what you're saying is true. What I'm saying is more true. Not because I'm saying it, because it's not my idea. Like, I think me and you would agree, we've actually had very few original thoughts.
yeah.
What we're really good at is finding patterns that are working and then using them. We don't create the patterns. Like I feel like people who create patterns are like geniuses. You know what I mean? Like Elon creates patterns. Like he has to close his eyes 15 years ago and tell people what he's seeing in the future. Like people think he's crazy. Or when Steve Jobs had to literally, Jose, he was sitting with his engineers. He would have to close his eyes and describe to them with words to the best of his ability what he was seeing in his mind. That's creating patterns.
Mm-hmm.
We're not doing that. What we're doing is noticing patterns. And then when we notice them, to use them. So here he is. He's more interested in being right. He's being emotional about his information. He's like, nope, this is the way. It's the only way. It's the way. It's the only way. And I'm like, yeah, dude, that is a way. Right.
Well, it
But two things can be true. And what I'm saying is more true.
well, it's almost like whenever you've posted videos online, like open houses are a waste of time. You'll say something like that, and people will be like, "Oh, they're not a waste of time. I closed 5 deals last year off open houses or 10 deals." What I think that i- it's not perspective, but it's like yes, you can do. And I think this is where sometimes you have to elaborate. Like when you say that it doesn't mean that you can't close any deals off of that. What it means is that it will be very hard to scale to 100 deals a year just based on doing open houses. And it's a lot less predictable than finding a way to find motivated sellers and then scaling that part out. And I think when people hear that, it's like, no, you're wrong, like this and that. No, you can close deals off of it. You can do 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, maybe 50 deals just by having that thought. But if you want to get to 75 or 100, there's going to have to be more efficient ways to target sellers to be able to close that amount of
Yeah. So it's a
business.
perfect example how like two things can be true at the same
Yeah,
time. So yeah, is it true that if you sit in open houses, you'll do a handful of deals? Yeah.
100%. 100%.
What I'm also aware though is if you spent the time that you were focused in those open houses, sitting in them, and instead spent the time role playing and prospecting for listings, will you do more deals? The answer is
100%.
yes.
100%.
So one is more true than the other.
Yeah.
It's just that to your point, people get emotional about the truth, right? And they want to argue, and really they're not interested in the truth. They're interested in being right. So while we were having that conversation and we're sitting down and like, this guy's telling me, he's like, oh, well, like what you're doing is not scalable. Like you're special, like nobody else can do it. I'm like, that's not true. That's not true at all. We have
Just
three people who are
Jessica
three
Nelson's
or four.
already like at 10,000
Yeah, bro.
followers, you know?
That's not true. And she was from nothing
Yeah.
and she didn't want to do it. And she was like, oh, I don't look like I'm 40 anymore. I'm like, who cares? Kim Kardashian ushered something bad into the world, which was, look at me. You need to be instead focused on, listen to me. It's more valuable.
I love when
And
you
you
said that.
actually have
When
a
you said
skill.
that to her, I love that because it changes the paradigm for her. It's like, okay, it's not look at me, it's listen to me. And it's funny because my first mentor, Vicente, which is also an EXP agent, when I went on a couple of appointments, I would be in a suit and he'd just be casual. And then somebody asked him, he's like, why aren't you in a suit like Jose? He's like, you don't care about this right here. He's like, you care about this. And he points
Yeah.
to his freaking head. And at that time, he
Yeah.
was so much more knowledgeable, but that's what he was like, look, you care about what's in here. And the guy's like, yeah, that's what I care about.
And it's true. It's funny because I did a local event and I wore like sweatpants and just like a t-shirt like I'm wearing right now. And the guy was new to the event, and Esteban Reyes brought him to the event.
He,
He's a coaching client. I think you met him in
yeah.
person. And the guy, when he first walks in the room, he's like, bro, what is that guy wearing? And then after the event, you know what he said? You can wear whatever you want.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Like, it doesn't matter what you wear, bro. Like, that's not what I'm here for. Like, I'm clear. You can wear whatever you want. So, yeah, like two things can be true at the same time. And what our goal and objective is to, particularly just in the real estate space. What's up, Esteban? He's actually on the stream. He was like, yeah, it's a true story. It is true. You were there, bro. So,
Wait, you didn't make that up right now? You just
no,
said
I
I'm
didn't make
like,
that up, bro. Yeah. So, what we're doing is trying to figure out what's worth stacking time on and what's true right now.
Yeah.
And the way we know what's true is because me and you are constantly iterating and growing. Because the moment we stop iterating and growing, we can't actually speak to what's true. We can only speak to, listen to what I'm about to say, we can only speak to what used to be true. And that's a problem. So if you're on this stream, I'm sure you've had like, you'll notice like a lot of the training in the space is like, it's rote, it's repetitious, it's like the same thing all the time. You get on a call, they're like, yeah, let's talk about context, whatever. The problem is because they're talking about what used to be true. They're not talking about what's true right now. Jose's going to do $2 million this year in revenue because he's dealing with what's true right now. What's true right now? Cash offers, PPL, wholesaling, flip it. Like that's what's true
Well,
right now.
I've always felt like I've been able to recognize patterns early. It's funny because I'm training an agent on probates right now, and he's listening to some of the calls that I have in the university. And I told him that I'm like, can you believe those calls were back in 2014 and 2015? And people are barely starting to catch on to that. And now I've moved on, we're doing like PPL and cash offers and just different things. Now it served its purpose. That was 10 years ago, bro. 10 years ago, where I saw a certain pattern. I was like, oh my God, this is a blue ocean right here. We can capitalize on this. And we mastered it. And then we moved on afterwards, So
That's right. It's funny because I think Brian's on this stream. He hopped on a call with me, uh, and I hadn't spoken to him for a little bit because I was like traveling or whatever. And when we hopped on the call, I was telling him all the stuff I'm doing. You know what he said to me? He's like, bro, I can't keep up with you. I said, what do you mean? He's like, every time I talk to you, you're doing something different. But that's how it should be, right? I should be constantly tinkering and playing with and moving on. And to your point, like, you know, I was doing that a while ago, which is cool. It still works. But like, what's working right now in this moment? Not what worked previously, not what worked a long time ago. And if we want to continue to keep playing this game at a high level, we have to, as leaders, constantly, continually be learning. What's working right now? What's true right now? Not what was true before, what's true right now. And the best way to do that is gather lots of information, have principles, have like certain underlying that are like gravity. These mental maps, Charlie Munger talks about these mental maps that I can use as a filter for reality, right? That are true, like gravity. Gravity's a mental map. Like ecosystems from biology, that's a mental map. You change one thing in the ecosystem, everything changes in response to it. What Novello talks about with the 4 forms of leverage, that's a mental map. Alex Hormozi's opportunity ladder, that's a mental map. You know, story branding, that's a mental map, right? Media as currency, that's a mental map. So we keep stacking these mental maps so that way I can get a clear picture as to what's true. And then once I get to what's true, now let's iterate. Let's take massive action. And as we take massive action and we keep iterating, we get data and feedback. And if somebody else is doing it like you, we're both believable people. We have long track records of good judgment. Hey, this is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm seeing. Da, 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 da. And then we can get to as close to the truth as we can. Now we're certain. And now when we're certain, me and Jose are running down the, in the airport to get to the plane, and everybody gets out of our way. But here's what's also true. If they want to get to the same destination as me and Jose, they start running with us. What they don't realize is the plane that me and Jose are running to is time freedom and location freedom. We're running to a plane that'll take us anywhere on the planet because we have income streams that follow us anywhere on the planet.
And we want to do it at a younger age as well, too. Meaning I don't want that. And that's one of the things that attracted me to you. Like when I was younger, I think I was like 23, 24, maybe 25. You're the first one that made me aware that humans only have a certain life expectancy and that at some point we could die. And before that, I don't think I had ever thought about that. I hadn't thought about like how like people, we're not guaranteed like our next breath. We're not guaranteed waking up tomorrow. And I'm not even guaranteed to live past 40 or 45 or 50 years old or whatever it may be. So I think when you have that in mind, it allows you to be like, okay, what do I actually want? And I was like, I don't want to wait 30 years to become a top producer. I want to do it in 5. And then it's like, I don't want to wait 50 years to have a retirement account at 63 and then look forward to retirement. No, I want to do it before 40, you know?
Yeah, bro. Yeah, I don't wanna, like, fully fund retirement accounts and wait till I and pay off a house and wait till I'm 65 to have freedom.
I don't, you know?
I don't wanna do that. And that's the guiding force behind everything that we're doing.
Yeah.
Because a lazy mind's answer is just to work harder.
And that's where we can help agents. We've been through what you guys are going through. We've literally been in the trenches, like Aaron close to 2,000 sales, me 900 and some, gonna approach hit 1,000 by next year. But we are literally in the same position, me especially in the same position where you guys were not too long ago. Maybe 5 years ago I was in a similar position, 7 years ago. So we can help you guys start to think differently, start to view things differently, get access to the truth. And then as we grow, you guys will continue to grow. And then the goal is to have time, location, and time freedom, basically, money freedom, basically.
That's exactly right. Yeah, where you have autonomy, where you have multiple streams, multiple flows of income that cover housing, transportation, food, and insurance.
Yeah.
That you then get to make decisions about work, not for money, but instead if it's meaningful to you. I want to do meaningful work with people that I like and enjoy. I like and enjoy Jose, and I believe we're doing meaningful work,
Yeah. And then it's
right?
and then that's one of the reasons why we both joined EXP, because EXP provides us with a vehicle where we can help other people just like us build financial freedom and actually have something that, regardless if they show up to work today, they have something that follows them in terms of location, and they have a residual stream of income that is there for them as well too.
Yeah, and we both are the kind of embodiment of that.
Yeah.
So you probably got to be up to like what, like 400 and something agents right now, 420, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. I'm rapidly approaching 400. We both have invested in real estate,
Yeah.
so we have that additional stream of income. We both have sold a lot of real estate. So this is really just about like proximity and about vehicle selection. I mean, one of the things you said to me, which stuck out to me, you were like, yeah, dude, if I was in a Honda and you were in a Ferrari, who would win? I'm like, well, you would win. And you're like, why? I'm like, because you're in a Ferrari. And he's like, what if you, that the one in the Honda, was a professional race car driver, who would win? I'm like, you probably still win. Why? And I was quiet. I was just like thinking about it. And you were like, the vehicle. And I was like, yeah, that's true. It is the vehicle. So, and you were saying it because you were talking to a guy about commercial real estate. And he was like, you're like, yeah, dude, I do this residential thing. I own a bunch of units. And he's like, yeah, bro, that's like a Honda. And you're like, what? Because in any other circle, everybody's like, yeah, you're the man. You own 57 doors. That's awesome. He's like, yeah, dude, that's a Honda. And he's like, you're like, what do you mean? And then he starts telling you how when you get at scale, you could refinance, you pull the money out, you still own the building, it's tax free, it's bigger numbers. And you were like, oh, that's true. That is a Ferrari. So he's like, yeah, no matter what you do, he's like, I'm always going to be bigger, faster, quicker, stronger.
Yeah.
Only because of my vehicle, not because I'm smarter than you, not because I work harder than you, just because of the vehicle I selected.
And I didn't see it. And that was Grant Cardone too, where he was like, he says, what's the most important number when buying an investment property? And I was like, I don't know. Is it NOI? Is it profit? Is it this? He's like, it's number of units. And I'm like, he's like, think about this. He's like, and I realize this because now I own like 57 rentals. If I increase all of the rents by $100 on 57 rentals, just by $100 times 57, that comes out to $5,700 a month. You multiply it by 12, that comes out to $68,000 a year. If you simply increase the rents by $100,
and then you divide by the cap rate, and you've added like
X amount of dollars,
like $1 million worth of whatever it is, right? Now, and what he's playing as a game is like, yeah, dude, what if I raise the rent $100 on 12,000 units?
And that's when it's like that number becomes really ridiculous. But when he said that, I was like, it forced me to think, because I was like, is this true? And then I started thinking
Mhm.
about it, and I don't think I realized it up until I experienced it, where I actually increased the rents by a certain amount of time. Or no, no, no. What happened was that in my market, from the time I bought the big building in 2019, I was projected to receive about 16 to 1700 bucks for a two-bedroom. And then what ended up happening is that the market rents went up to about $2,500 for a two-bedroom from like 2019 to now. So I was like, oh my God, the projected rents for my apartment just went up like $800 a month. And I was like, 800 times 25, it just literally went up $20,000. And that's like, well, if I only owned a fourplex and a triplex, I would have only benefited very tiny from this incremental increase in rent. Now that I have the larger units, I actually benefit tremendously from it. And that's when it really clicked. I was like, this is true. I've experienced it. I tried it, and it's true, you know?
And
So,
it's true. Yeah,
yeah.
so now you like, "Oh, yeah, okay, that's accurate."
Yeah.
And the same was true with me and you, like, when I heard, Grant Cardone say having all your money trapped in your house and in a retirement plan is another form of poverty. Like, "What did you just say?" "What?" Because I was doing all of that. And I had to literally sit down just like you did. I sat down in a quiet room. I was actually by myself. I was in Austin, actually, at a learning event. And I remember I pulled out my journal. I'm like, "What does that mean?" And I started doing the math, and I'm like, "Wait a minute. Can I take Carla out on a date night with"
Your retirement account. No.
and I'm like, "No." "Can I pay for my kids' private school with the equity in my house?" No. And even though I had a meaningful net worth, it's all relative, but for most people, it would probably be a meaningful amount. I had no cash flow, and I felt like I needed to work. So I'm like, "Oh yeah, not that I needed. I did need to work." So I'm like, "Oh, that's true." But at first blush, because it's so again, it's against what I believe, which is really what other people have told me, that there's these sacred cows. This is what you do. And once I became clear, and he said that, and I had to journal, think about it. What did he say? I was like, "Oh my God, he's right. That's true." So then what happened? Walked away from home ownership. I started to rent. People think I'm crazy. I started to not fully fund retirement accounts, instead plow money into other things that pay me cash. Do that for 4 years. I turn around and now there's time freedom and location freedom. Walked away from another way of doing business to doing a different way of doing business. And again, time freedom. Look at the combination. So he said that's a piece of data. I walked away from doing something. You told me, hey, you got to look at this EXP thing. I'm like, no, I'm good. I own part of an office. Like, I don't need to look at that. First answer is no for a whole year. Finally, I was like, yeah, I'll take the call with Lars. I feel like you were probably like, yeah. So, and I take the call with Lars, and Lars says one thing to me about the difference between revenue share and profit share, and how revenue share has existed for 30 years. Another model made one person a billionaire, and this model makes us him. As soon as he said that, I got it. Then what I do, walked away from something,
Well,
and walked away from money because I had to lose money. But look what happened. Like, so what Grant's saying, that's also true. Mine and Carla's life has changed dramatically every time I walk away from something. But it doesn't make walking away from something any easier. Like, I'm going through something right now, and you are too, where now it's time for me to walk away from something. But you don't want to do it because money has an addictive quality, and because of it, you get addicted to the way that you receive it. So it becomes difficult. Even you, like, you're like, yeah, I'm going to walk away from this thing, but you're like, yeah, I need this first. And I've told you, I'm like, bro, like, if you focus on what I'm doing, we could blow this thing up and it wouldn't even matter. And you're like, yeah, but I want to do this first. Okay, fine.
gives me certainty.
It gives you certainty. Yeah. So I think people look at you and they think you're like this swashbuckler of risk. You're actually not, dude. You're really conservative.
I take very calculate. Like, people think that because I bought all this real estate that I'm like a big risk taker. It's it's all calculated risk, meaning like I know what the building will produce. I know how to repair the buildings. I know what they're worth afterwards. So it's all numbers and calculations. So it's actually very, very conservative because the odds are substantially stacked in my favor to win. But what I was going to say is, like, and a lot of people don't realize this, like, because people join EXP and they don't really put much thought into their sponsor. And that was one of the things that I had a couple of different options for for sponsors. And I chose Lars as my sponsor. And that's how important a sponsor is, because I got Aaron on a call with my sponsor, Lars, and Lars says one thing to him that changes everything for Aaron in regards to his vision of the model. And Aaron jumps on. The only advice that I would give you guys, if you guys are considering joining EXP, be very selective of who your sponsor is, not only for can they help you grow your business, but can this person help me maybe take somebody off the fence that's borderline like EXP or a different company? And is that the type of person that I'd want on my side, potentially helping me partner and grow? And are they focused on that part as well too? Because if they're not focused on it, it's going to be really hard for them to help you grow that aspect of it.
Yeah, it's exactly right. So it's like, who do you want on your third party call? Like having that conversation with people because, and you would, I know you would say yes to what I'm about to say to you. And it's true. So even though me and you had a really good relationship and like, I love you like a
Yeah.
brother,
I don't think I would have been able to have
I wasn't going to listen to you on a business opportunity.
not that.
Like you wouldn't have been able to get me to do it without Lars.
No, zero chance. Not only that, but Lars.
You've been trying for a year, bro. And I was just like, no. And Vicente's another perfect example where I was that person for Vicente. He's your like godfather.
Yeah. And he was going to go to a different company.
Bro, he was like a week away from going to a different company. Do you remember when we had him on the podcast at your place? I was like, hey, bro, what made you come over? He looked right at me. He goes, you. I was like, really? That's crazy. He's like your godson. He's like, yeah, dude. But like, and I love him, but I needed to hear it from like someone else or like a business person. I don't know, like whatever it is, he heard it from me. So what you're saying is 100% true. 100% accurate. So, our goal and objective as we do these is to continue to add value, continue to help you. Again, the best way to show somebody you can help them is to help them for free. And the most scalable way to do it is in media. So we're going to keep coming to you doing this. If you guys want to hear anything or have us talk about particular topics, just DM me, DM Jose. We're doing the Do More Deal Summit, guys. You must, when I say must, you must do whatever you can to move everything around in your calendar to get in the room. I'm going to drop it in the chat right now. Pace Morby's going to be at the event speaking. He has the #1 book in the country on creative finance. Me and Jose believe that the future of real estate will be agents that understand retail and also understand investing in creative, because they'll be able to provide more options to consumers. Whoever provides more options and adds more value wins.
100%.
Yeah,
I agree.
So, we have some of the best people on the planet in that room in one place. Get in the room. Move whatever you have to do around in your calendar to get in the room. And I will say this publicly, okay? If you buy a ticket and it is not an amazing experience for you, me and Jose will refund the cost of the ticket. Okay?
100%.
That's how confident we are that this is going to be a life-changing event. My life has changed completely because I'm attending events. That's where I met Jose. That's where I've met other people in my life, right? And big decisions are made at big events. So get in the room. I dropped the link in the chat. We're just starting to run ads. I know it's going to sell out like really fast. We have no kind of hesitation on that. And we'd love to see you and love to meet you in person. So we appreciate you guys. Jose's got an appointment to go get to. He's got to go take a listing. I got something I'm doing. I got another coaching call I got to hop on. So let's go be great. Let's go. Let's grow. We'll talk to you soon.
Later, guys.
Peace.